Love spell gone wrong. It was October when my very best friend, Lynn, and I decided we'd celebrate our birthday together as we always did. But this was a special year. We were both turning 18, so we decided it'd be a good idea to celebrate by bar hopping from town to town. Down Route 20, there was a main route that connected all of our little upstate Ohio towns together. Our birthdays were less than 2 weeks apart, and we'd been best friends from our first meeting at age 12. Not too much to remember until our last stop. We were about 40 miles away from home at this point, and this is where my story begins. I met Kevin. He was tall, blonde, and had sparkling blue eyes that twinkled with a hint of mischief. He was 5 years older than me, quite gregarious, fun-loving, spontaneous, with a hysterical sense of humor. He had a very adventurous spirit and enjoyed skydiving. He was also an amateur photographer as well, liking to take pictures as he was free-falling. He had a job, a car, and was attending the local college. I just loved his spirit. As you can imagine, I fell in love fast and furiously. We were together every spare moment, running around with our friends and going to parties, just living it up as young people do. Not a care in the world. If a great song came on the radio, he'd pull the car over and dance in the street. Anytime we went to the movies, I'd let him pick, as his choice was the best choice always. He was smart and articulate and very good looking. There was never a dull moment with Kevin. I just adored him. June 1973, he and his little brother had decided to take a road trip out to experience the mountains in Colorado for the summer. I was so happy for them both, and I really loved his brother too and wanted them to go and have a good time. What I didn't know yet, I was pregnant. While they were out on their adventure, we communicated infrequently. No cell phones back then. I was afraid to tell him, and when I finally told him, he went silent. I didn't hear back from him until about 2 weeks later. He wrote me a letter and informed me that he wasn't coming back to Ohio. I was devastated, heartbroken beyond imagination. During this time, I came across an article in the Reader's Digest on how to cast a love spell. Of course, that's the answer, right? I was diligent and cast this spell every single day for several months through tears and intense emotional upheaval. I'd never experienced such pain in my life, except for when Shep, our family dog, died when I was 16. One night, I had slept on the couch and suddenly awoke at 6 a.m., fully awake, and said to myself, "He's back." It was late October, a full year now since we'd met, and I'd been very diligent in my task. Now I do believe this was a supernatural experience because this is not now nor never was the way I woke up. It usually takes me at least an hour to become somewhat coherent, and I didn't drink coffee back then. Well, I waited until 10:30 a.m. before I called his mom's house. This was an excruciating 4.5 hours as I tried to anticipate his response. When I finally did call, his brother answered. I just knew he was back, though I cannot tell you how I knew it was that. I just did. I still had no way of knowing. I guess it's more of a feeling/gut feeling. I guess I feel knowledge in my spirit. It's weird and hard to explain. But on with my story. After speaking with him, he drove the 40 miles and came to see me. I don't know what went through his mind. I was very pregnant and had gained about 50 pounds, but everything seemed to be alright. He moved in with me right then and there. I got a job and the baby came. What a darling little boy he was, and the apple of our eye. At first I didn't notice the changes in Kevin. They were very subtle at first, but soon he became very stressed, quitting his job. He started to do major drugs and alcohol and spend more and more time away from home. Now, we'd done our fair share of partying, let me tell you, but this became way out of hand. And maybe now that we had a baby, I wasn't so much fun anymore since I took my responsibility as a parent very seriously. When he was home, nothing was right. He imagined all sorts of things and became very distrustful. He did things that were out of character for him and became paranoid and drove me crazy right along with him. I watched him spiral downward into madness. My point, you see, like Gage Creed, he wasn't the same person that came back. He was completely changed, no longer any fun. He enjoyed psychological head games, and I guessed it was some sort of testing ground. I don't know how he did it, but man, he had my mind so messed up. We even went to counseling, and thank God they kept him at an institution for a while. I was relieved at the time because I got a badly needed reprieve from him, but they couldn't help him. You see, it wasn't until much later that I realized he'd been possessed by demons, and I do believe it was more than a few. The last time I saw him before I left for good, he was unrecognizable. He emitted an undescribable odor that was so offensive, but not a normal smell. His knees were larger than his thighs, and you could see every rib protruding from the back or front. His eyes had dark circles and were sunk into his head, and he looked absolutely haunted. He looked like a person who'd been in a concentration camp. I remember looking at him in amazement that he was actually still alive. I was finally able to escape by taking my children and moving to the middle of the US where I knew no one. I did see him again sometime later. He'd put on a small amount of weight, although his mind was still the same as it was when I'd left. God forgive me. I always wondered if I'd been responsible for causing the demons by my spellcasting. It seemed like he had a legion in there. I still feel responsible because I don't know for sure if every time I cast that spell, he received another one. I kind of suspected it was my fault, like another knowing. Don't mess around with any kind of spell, no matter how innocent it seems. You just don't know the ramifications of your actions. Believe me, it's better to let them leave and find another person. It's just not worth the torment you'll put themselves and you through. The reason I've decided to share this is maybe I can get some peace knowing my story helped at least one person. I've lived with this my entire life, so I hope this could be your warning. Don't let the demons follow, and don't let them take over. I wanted love, and I certainly found it prior, but I shouldn't have wished it upon him if that's not what he wanted. When he went on that trip, maybe he changed, or maybe I changed, but doing that spell almost certainly only brought hate and potentially some sort of paranormal spirit into our lives. Our love was never like this, and our child is a blessing, but our relationship now is a curse. I almost wish that our boy didn't have to know his father as he is, but as the guy he used to be. That was the one I loved, not the demons that have taken him over now. Without knowing what the past or present holds for him, all I can say is that I hope he finds his footing, and that whatever was going on in his personal life resolves itself over time. I understand some people will blame me for the things that I've done in the past, especially towards him. I know it's hard for the person you love, or for a loved one to leave during such a reckless time of hate and anguish, but this is just something that I had to do to make sure my mental state stayed the way it was. I never stopped loving him, but I did stop loving whatever was in charge of him now.